Hey there, bud. Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Hattenbeard coming at you with our XFL Week 5 recap video. Big takeaways from this weekend in the XFL. We had our first major officiating blunder. Houston looks to be completely unstoppable, and the DC Defenders finally get it right by stomping my St. Louis Battlehawks at home. That and more. Stick around. Our first game this weekend, we've seen the Seattle Dragons travel down to Houston to square off against the Roughnecks. In my matchups video on Friday, I said that Seattle looked like a much better team with BJ Daniels at quarterback the week prior, and they sure did look at this weekend, really taking it down to the wire, and it was up to a controversial kneel-down call at the end of the game with potential time left on the clock that really kind of let Houston slide with that one. But Seattle couldn't get out of their own way. They continue to make the same errors that they've made all season long. I don't understand if it's coaching, if it's execution, but at times the Dragons look like world beaters, and at times they look like the worst team in the XFL. I think moving forward with BJ Daniels gives them an advantage that Brandon Silvers didn't give them as far as athleticism and abilities to make plays. But until they're able to execute properly and install a game plan and follow through with that game plan, I don't think the Seattle Dragons are necessarily going to be a contender, especially in the West, where they have to continue, deal with Dallas if Landry Jones ever gets healthy, and Houston. Houston showed us though why they're the best team in the XFL. When it matters most, Houston really turns out, and they were able to execute. PJ Walker and Cam Phillips both looked sensational, as always. And the Houston Roughnecks defense really showed me that they're here to play. That I can't remember his first name, but Gates has had 3 game-sealing takeaways in the fourth quarter the last 3 weeks. So the takeaway from this game really is that playmakers make plays, and Jim Zorn has a really red nose. Game this weekend, we've seen the New York Guardians travel to Dallas to square off against the Renegades. And I said Friday that I couldn't buy into the New York Guardians until they showed me, consistent play, not just at home, but also on the road. And they really showed me that this weekend. Anytime your defensive linemen are getting interceptions and almost returning them for touchdowns, you're probably going to win the game. Luis Perez continues to just build this very strange, very interesting legend behind him, this lore of the Division II quarterback, professional bowler turned professional quarterback, and is having pretty good success this season in the XFL. So the New York Guardians looked pretty good. Dallas looked like Dallas normally does. They came out and they started slow. The only difference is where Landry Jones throws the ball down the field, Philip Nelson throws the ball sideways. So even though he had, again, just like in week 1, even though he had a bunch of completions, he had a very lackluster performance in terms of yardage and overall production. So, New York now looks to be like a better team than they were 2 weeks ago when we all kind of left them for dead. And Dallas, until they're able to get Landry Jones back, looks like they're kind of dead in the water, despite having 2 of the more athletic running backs in the entire league at their disposal and completely interchangeable. Both Lance Dunbar and Cameron Artis-Payne continue to look like, again, 2 of the most dominant running backs. I mean, I guess you could say maybe that they compare. I guess you could put Christine Michael and Matt Jones and say that maybe they're more explosive in terms of overall production. But I think, the Battlehawks their offense is designed differently than the Renegades. So the numbers are obviously going to be skewed. But the main takeaway from this game is Dallas now looks to be falling behind everybody else in the West. And hey, with what shook down in DC, now there's a 3-way tie in the East. So congratulations on a nice win on the road to the New York Guardians. And Dallas, boy, you better hope to get Landry Jones back real soon. The third game, first game on Sunday, third game of the weekend. I had a lot of interest in, not only because it was my St. Louis Battlehawks in action, but I just thought the matchup seemed kind of good. Like we were going to see a real competitive game. If you're into defense, then that was your type of game to watch. And if you're into beer snakes, that was the game to watch. I gotta hand it to the DC Defenders and whatever defensive game plan they installed. They came out and they completely shut down Jordan Ta'amu. He looked all kinds of out of sorts. The Battlehawks run game, at least, was productive for 3/4 of the game. And also, clearly, in week 4, the Dragons showed with BJ Daniels that the Battlehawks' Achilles heel on defense is a mobile quarterback, because old 12 gauge got about 2 series, looked like shit, and they brought in old Gangliatron there, the lumbering lizard from Norton Shores, Michigan, Tyree Jackson, who is he's surprisingly athletic for as big as he is. He doesn't look fast, but he moves fast. And with the league moving towards a more mobile quarterback having to be a dual threat in the XFL, I think we might have seen a glaring hole by 2 different teams now in the St. Louis Battlehawks defense. So they need to sharpen that up. I think the coaching staff and that team as a whole will be able to really turn it around. I don't have, I guess, as much of a concern as some would say about this issue. I think that they'll be able to fix it over the next week. And DC, boy, good for you guys. You know, good for you guys. I think there is a mental issue going on with Cardale Jones. I think that first loss really rattled him out in LA. I think that really shook something, and I think Pep Hamilton has identified that. Now, he did look happy on the sidelines when Tyree Jackson threw that touchdown to Kari Lee, and he came out and he celebrated with him, so that's a good sign. And maybe this isn't a permanent switch. Maybe this is just, they noticed the weakness as well, and we're trying to exploit it, and successfully so. So maybe there's a quarterback controversy brewing in DC. My money would say no, though. I would say Cardale Jones is still probably the starter moving forward. But congratulations to the DC Defenders. With them winning and the Guardians winning, now there's a 3-way tie in the East between the Battlehawks, Guardians, and Defenders. So congratulations to the DC Defenders on a big win. Our 4th and final game this XFL Week 5 weekend kicked off at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I didn't really care about either one of those 2 teams, both the Tampa Bay Vipers or the LA Wildcats. I'd be lying to you if I told you that I watched this whole game. I definitely watched the first quarter almost. And then I woke up at the end. So take that for what it's worth. I understand what the XFL is trying to do there in appealing to the local markets, so I get it. But as far as being on, East Coast time, kind of sucks for a guy like me. But take away from this, obviously I think the Week 5 MVP has to go to the LA Wildcats quarterback Josh Johnson. After he proceeded to tell Norm Chow exactly where he can take his offensive approach to football and place it, he was throwing dimes down the field to the tune of 288 yards and count them 1, 2, 3, 4 TDs. Josh Johnson really showed why, even though at 33 years old, he can throw with the best of them. He is obviously making a statement for a dark horse MVP of the league. And Tampa Bay showed that even with the momentum from last week's win and coming out ahead early and looking like they might be able to run away with that game, they kind of fall into the same situation as Seattle, where they just can't seem to execute 100% of the time. I'm not saying this is the XFL. I'm not saying you have to execute and win 100% of the plays 100% of the time to win 100% of the games. But what I am saying is that you have to win. I mean, at least 85% of those snaps. And Tampa Bay just kind of fell out at the end. Let's be honest. Playmakers make plays. And I think LA just had more playmakers. So, Josh Johnson's your Week 5 MVP over here at Hat and Beard Productions. And I think that's really all I got to say about that game. I didn't really care about it. I don't know if the Tampa Bay coaching staff is the right fit for the XFL. I feel like I really feel like Seattle and Tampa Bay draw a lot of similarities in that they have talented players. They just don't necessarily know how to utilize those players. And until they figure that out, they're going to continue to spiral downward. So really, it's kind of a 8A and 8B as to who the worst team in the XFL is right now between the Dragons and the Vipers. I do think that if you were to square up... Now, granted, that's actually saying a lot, because without Landry Jones, the Renegades look like hot garbage. So I guess they're not the worst two teams in the XFL. It's kind of a muddled mess down in the basement of the XFL. So anyway, congratulations to the LA Wildcats on a bounce-back victory after traveling to the East Coast last week and getting punched right in the mouth by the New York Guardians. And Josh Johnson, again, Week 5 MVP. All right, bud, that's going to do it for this week's XFL Week 5 recap video. Man, I super appreciate you guys turning out the way you do, man. This community is really growing, and obviously I couldn't do it without all of you. If this is your first time here, bud, thanks for clicking on the thumbnail. And, if you really like what we do here, go ahead and hit subscriptions. That way you never miss out, on what we do here. We're covering the XFL right now, but we're going to be moving into NFL content probably here in the next week or so. I would like to start covering some NFL draft, first-round draft projections. So if that's something you'd like to see, drop a comment down below or leave a thumbs up with, any input would be awesome. I'm just trying to grow here and bring some quality content to you guys. Let me know if you like this video. Bud, you're just awesome. So I've been Hat and Beard. You've been some toe jam on rye bread. See you next time. Bye.